Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Friday Clownversation. Today, I'm talking with the really wonderful legend of clowning, Jeff RAZ. So if you love clowning and you want to find out more about clowns, stick around. It's just a conversation with a fellow clown. It's not very serious, we're clowning around. It's really just a clownversation. All right, everybody. You know, I really should get Teddy to re-record that video because that distortion at the end is just very unprofessional. So I'm sorry about that. Today, everybody, I'm with a very cool Jeff RAZ who'll be on in just a second. I'm super excited to talk to him and talk about his amazing life in clowning and circus and the books that he's written. If you don't know me, my name is Barnaby, and I'm the founder of Clown Spirit, where we take the power of clowning and we use it to bring lightness, joy, and connection to your life and the lives of everybody around you. If you haven't checked it out, check out www.clown-spirit.com for all the cool stuff we have going on. We have Clownversations every single week, except for a few weeks over the summer when I'm going to take a break and give you all a break. So this is actually the last Clownversation of this second season. We've been doing it for 2 whole seasons, folks, 2 years. And I think there's about 70 odd of them now under the belt, 70 Clownversations. This is the big finale of the second season. And it's a really wonderful, wonderful person. I'm very excited to talk to Jeff. But first, a quick message from our sponsors, actually, Professor Teddy Love. Okay, over to you, Teddy. Hello, everybody! Now, Mr. King and I are trying to grow this channel. We're trying to get the marvelous art of clowning to as many people as we can around the world. And there's so many ways that you can join in. You can hit the subscribe button below this video. You could give us a thumbs up. It really helps to boost the channel. Or you could get into the chat and tell us your thoughts, your questions about clowning. Or better still, you can check out our amazing Patreon site and find all the cool bonuses that you get if you become a Clownversation supporter. So many ways for us to get the clown out. Back to you in the studio, Mr. King. Yay, thank you so much, Teddy. He definitely wants some love, doesn't he? He definitely... you can see it there. He wants something. He wants you to like him. He wants you to love him. So, yes, please hit that subscribe button right now if you're not a subscriber already on this Clown Spirit YouTube channel. And, you know, if you just like the video, that really, really helps. Helps us to feel loved and liked. And it helps other people to know about what's going on here as well. And also get in the chat, folks. I can see some people are in the chat already. Joanna Bassi. Hi, Joanna. We're going to have you on Clownversations before too long, I promise. Misha, Catfish, Patricia from Chicago. Hi, folks. If you're there, if you're listening in, please jump into the chat. Say hi. Let us know where you are. Dumay. Hi, Dumay. And also, if you have questions for Jeff at any point during the conversation, then just stick them into the chat and we'll feed them into the conversation. Now, the main business of the day, Jeff is has had a pretty remarkable clowning life, which is exemplary for all of us in many ways. He starred in Cirque du Soleil's Corteo for over 500 performances. He was a co-founder of the Clown Conservatory in San Fransisco. He has performed and taught in Eskimo villages in the middle of winter. He founded the Medical Clown Project, and he repurposed his performing and teaching skills to work with the global communication consulting firm Stand and Deliver. And he still does corporate consulting using his clown skills, as I'm interested to talk to him about that. He's also taken these skills and experiences in the writing of 3 remarkable books: The Secret Life of Clowns, The Snow Clown, and Love Death Circus. And we're going to hear all about those 3 books in just a moment. So please, folks, join me in welcoming to the Clownversation stage the very wonderful Jeff RAZ.
You got a big audience today, Barnaby. They're
Huge,
loud.
huge. Yeah, they're all very excited for you.
That was really nice. Thank you for
stopped
that.
very suddenly there. They're very well orchestrated.
Well, once we start talking, they don't want to be, drowning us out.
Right, exactly. Yes. Jeff, how are you today? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm good. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
Yes.
Especially after that intro.
Yeah. Well, so you have had a pretty exciting life, and we were just talking off air a little bit about Cirque du Soleil and Corteo and the 500 performances. When I interview people who've been in Cirque, which is not very often, I'm always really kind of curious about what that's like, because it sounds very glamorous, right? To perform with Cirque du Soleil in this huge show. It sounds exciting, romantic, glamorous. What was it really like?
It is all those things. And I'm a cranky kind of person, and I backdoored my way into working with Cirque du Soleil. I was 49 when I started working with Cirque du Soleil. I had a long career, lots of things. I was running a school for professional clowns. So it wasn't, I wasn't one of the people knocking on the door. But when I got the job, and I got the job partly because I looked like the guy who was leaving, which is classic in casting. And it took 6, 7, 8 months to finalize the contract. And before the guy who originated the role, a guy named Mauro, who left his name with the role, before he left. So it's a long time preparing. And when I got into the swing of the show, which takes a while, it was lovely. The thing surprised me was how lovely the community was, because Cirque du Soleil is a giant corporation. At that point, it was a $1 billion, $2 billion corporation. But each show, Corteo, is about 140 people, which is that sweet size for a village. So I enjoyed that a lot. I also enjoyed, 500 shows. I say it because people who haven't worked with Cirque du Soleil go, wow, it's a lot of shows. People in Cirque du Soleil say, oh, you're a nobody. I have some of my colleagues who are in Corteo who are still doing Corteo. They must be over 3,000, maybe over 4,000 performances of the same show. I love that. And I had an interest when I was on tour with Cirque du Soleil. We went and taught a workshop at a ballet in Texas, and the prima ballerina came out to lunch with us, and she said, I can't understand how you do the same show. I live for the new show and the new life. And I said, I get it. I like that too. But there's something about clowning where you live for the repetition, because you're always about finding the new audience. It's a lifelong learning is what they're now calling it, but that's also clowning. And my commitment there was, I was running a school out of my laptop, and I had someone running it in San Francisco. But my commitment was, I'm going to try to do on stage what I teach my students to do, which was not easy. And I failed a lot. But every show I made a commitment. I asked myself, okay, Jeff, it's Thursday. It's the 6th show of the week. Do you want to be a hack, or do you want to be an artist? And I would usually answer artist. Okay. So what are you going to do a little differently today? And often the mistakes, of course, is, the soundboard goes down. Beautiful. Whatever the mistakes are, clowns live for it. It's the little rip in the fabric that allows you to go like that.
I always think that I know I'm supposed to be a clown because when I watch shows, the mistakes are the bits that I love as well. And not everyone feels that way. But for me, I like, oh, that bit was real.
Yeah. I've coined a little phrase, a golden mistake, because you can go like I started as a juggler, and certainly early on, and I've seen many jugglers, very, very good jugglers, who when they drop, you can see that some shame, because it is shameful as a juggler to drop on stage. There's, even some producers will count your drops. But it doesn't need to be that way. From a clown point of view, once that ball is dropped, or once that club is dropped, you've ripped the veneer of being a perfect juggler, which if you go, oh, good, a new connection has happened,
Mm.
lots can go well. And I use that idea with people who do PowerPoint conversations. Oh, what if the slides go down? I said, beautiful. You get to talk to the audiences yourself without this distraction. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I said, well, let's work on how you can do that and be good about it.
So fascinating. I love that you can relate mistakes, drops in clowning directly to a kind of, corporate presentation.
It wasn't, a lot of my career was not choices, which means when like you introduce me, I go, oh, interesting guy. I wonder who he is. Because I had 2 kids, and when I left Cirque du Soleil, I needed to make money because one of them was thinking of going to college pretty soon, and then the next one might be thinking of going to college. So I backdoored into the consulting world.
Mm.
What I learned about clowning, many things I learned about clowning. One is it really is a great set of skills for life.
Mm.
And I also was shocked at how little I had taken my professional skills as a clown into the rest of my life.
Mm. Interesting. That's a great insight.
It's a scary one for me. It's like, all this stuff and you don't use it.
Mm.
But also, I think all of us have cliches about clowning, including or especially clowns. We have cliches about clowning. We have cliches about ourselves. And they aren't always right. Usually not. So
what are some of these things, these applications to life that you weren't applying?
Well, the golden mistakes is a great one. Also, this idea that laughter usually comes from connection rather than from a joke. Well, you were just talking about your guest from last week who just won the big British game show. And the way he won it was winning over the grouchiest judge over the course of time, which means that's connection. I'm sure his first act had as many funny things as his third act in terms of structure and in terms of gags. But this grouchy judge didn't laugh the first time. It was only getting to know him, which is also why clowns, we like lots of entrances. With Corteo, I had 13 entrances.
Wow.
For another act, the heavy acrobatics act, 13 entrances, you're dead. Now, when I was with the Pickle Family Circus, I'd have of a 2-hour, 40-minute show, my partner Diane Wozniak and I would do 2 hours plus of that, including a lot of the acrobatics. And that's when you're sucking oxygen. But I wasn't in Cirque du Soleil. I was really more of an actor than anything else. And you want that because you build up the relationship.
So when you say entrances, these entrances, do you mean that for each little bit you had an entrance, or that you would sort of do a false entrance and then go off and do another entrance?
No. Oh, thank you for doing that. I forget. The term entrance was at one point, but as you're pointing out, is no longer short for an act.
Okay, like entree.
Yes, but I use it. Obviously, I use it incorrectly, like right now. But I stick with that old word because some of my entrances in Corteo were very short. They weren't entrees. Some were entrees. But even the one where I walk across this, they had a couple of clown shoes rigged so that they would walk on their own. Someone, an acrobat in the wings would pull it, and it looked great. And I would walk crossing. That really is an entrance. It's not an entree. It's a sight gag. It's carpet clowning in a ringling parlance, but it added to the build of connection over the 2.5 hours.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's similar in a way to the role of a host in a cabaret show, right? The MC, it's me again. It's me again. Oh, it's you again. Again. And we can build a little rapport and story over that whole show.
It's great analogy. And when I MC, I don't MC cabaret, I often just benefit shows. They're great shows, but they're a one-off. One of the things I'm very careful of is not to do too much too early. I'm the only person there who gets to build the relationship. Let the acts go. I'll even make sure I'll intro an act, let that act go, then right into another act, build in a transition without me, so then I can outro this act and intro the next, because I'm going to be your host, but I'm not the only one there. And that I think hosts or MCs make the mistake of, oh, I've got to do a 3-minute bit here. I got to get a laugh here. I got to get 7 laughs here. And if you're more like, let the other acts do that work. My work is connection, heart.
Very cool. I watched some of your interviews. You did a very interesting one on television. And the host of the TV show was this woman, and you do a very good job of kind of, because she's a kind of slightly glamorous, like news,
very glamorous. Let's not say slightly. And by the way, I sat next to her husband during the whole taping. Her husband, who's a professional basketball player, who's had a 17-year international career, as a wonderful guy. But yes, she's very glamorous, and we did a clown act together.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, you get her to be silly and goofy and stand there and do this clown act with her, and you do exactly what you're just saying. You really create kind of connection.
Well, that, I have to tell you, that was so interesting, because I don't do a lot of TV, and I've done some movies. I'm a stage actor. I'm a union stage actor, but I am not good in front of a camera as a rule. As a matter of fact, the short movies I've done, or the short pieces I've done in movies, I've watched and I go, that's a good editor. Because I sucked and you made something work. But on stage is what I'm used to. So I'm sitting there watching, and I notice, first of all, everyone else in the room, including the producer, seems like a teenager to me.
Yes.
This person comes up and says, "Hi, I'm the producer." I say, "Of what? The high school yearbook?" But you get to a certain age and that happens. So, but I'm sitting there noticing that there's a nervousness in the room that happens. That's backstage. And I thought, oh, my job for this, to help this show, is to bring it down and to just be grounded. Because I got nothing to sell. I got nothing to push. I have nothing to prove. Let me be the connector, which is what a place of clowns should be in the ideal term. And so it was just wonderful listening to her. And then I have to tell you, you may notice, and I'm pitching this show, but my younger son, who lives in Reading, which is 3.5 hours from me, texted me last night. He goes, "You were in the news in February. Why didn't you let me know?" And I said, "What? I wasn't." But he was referring to that. So the clown bit I was doing is an old thing that we call in this area grapefruit, where the number one picks up the number two and takes them off. Well, she was wearing an off-the-shoulder blouse. So I'm prepping with the stage manager, who I told you is 13, and I look over, and then as we're just at us, I said, "Can we switch sides?" And the stage manager, or the producer, goes, "No. This is her side. That is your side." I said, "Okay." So you may notice that I take her arm and kind of the arm. But that, golden mistakes. You think everybody's got something on both their shoulders of clothing, and they don't.
But the arm is quite good, actually. It works.
It worked. It worked partly because she was good at being connected.
Yeah. She was sort of low status, high status. It was interesting.
Yes. But she did the amazing thing that doesn't happen that often in interviews. It's happening now, but it doesn't often, which is she actually listened. A lot of times you look at an interviewer and you see behind their eyes, the next question is, and they're just waiting for your mouth to close, because I had to memorize their questions. And she was not doing that. Bless her.
Yeah, I noticed that too, actually, that she was engaging with you. It was cool. So, Jeff, you've got some wonderful books there behind you, a big collection of books. And I know that 3 of them are very special.
The ones I wrote? Yeah.
Because you wrote them. Yeah. And that's a remarkable achievement in itself. Just writing 3 books is fantastic. And as I embarrassedly admitted to you just before we came on air, I haven't gotten to read any of them yet. So there's my golden mistake. And I'm not going to feel the shame of dropping the ball. It's okay. I can't read all the books in the world.
You actually are in deep company with 99.9999% of the world, even that percentage of the English reading world. Yes.
Well, let's hope that changes, because I'm sure they're wonderful. And has anybody watching read them? You know, so if anybody watching has read them, then jump into the chat and tell us what you thought. Did you like them?
The answer is yes to that one.
So Jeff, anyway, since I haven't read them, I'm going to have to ask you to give us a little summary of each one. And I don't know if you want to do that in the order that you wrote them in, or whatever.
You know, I did that little summary for you in the order I wrote them. But I had, after I got 3 books, I had this little thought to myself. I was not going to write 3 books. It took me 10 years to write the first book. And I thought I was done at 8 years. And I just hired an editor, and I gave him, emailed him the manuscript and waited for, maybe he'll have some spelling issues. And he goes, Jeff, I can work with you on this. It's a really good outline.
Oh, God.
And then he said, no, I'm serious. And when I recovered, from 8 years of pain right there, he said, listen, I'll take it one step at a time, and we'll do this. And he was right. In 6 months, he essentially gave me a master's degree in writing, which I needed. But the first thing he said is, first, go through the manuscript and find moments where you can give details about the setting or the clothes. And I said, for real, oh no, the designers do that. Because I'd written 15 plays before the first book, and the designers do that.
Right.
Luckily, he had written quite a few screenplays and said, no, Jeff, I hate to tell you, you need to do that. And I didn't know what he meant. He had to give me examples. I sat in his living room petting his dog as he gave me examples in his own writing of, how do you describe clothes? I don't care. And he goes, no, you have to. So once I got 3 books, I decided once I had 1 book, and I started writing another one because I liked writing. It was really fun. I decided, okay, if you write a book, you're a writer. If you write 2 books, you're an author. And if you write 3, you're a prolific author. So, then I realized when I had 3, you also have a trilogy, right? Yeah. 3 is a trilogy, and they all have similar things. Anyway, so I'm going to give you the trilogy order. That was a long way to get here. So this one, Snow Clown, is an adventure story. It's auto-fiction. All of mine are, which is I'm writing from my memory and getting to make stuff up whenever I want to. That's what auto-fiction is. It's a great way to write. This one is from a time early in my career when I was touring up to Alaska. I went up to Alaska 10 times over my life, usually in the middle of winter. And a lot of those were in Yupik Eskimo villages in the southwestern part, the closest to the Arctic Ocean and to Russia, on the Yukon River, on the Kuskokwim River. And then it has a section of being an artist in residence in Nebraska, and both of which are very strange places to a guy from Berkeley, California. The adventure part keeps the narrative going. The real theme in my mind is an artist being paid to bring their magic to someplace, and then realizing there's a lot of magic there. There's a lot of art there, and trying to be respectful and also learn from and have that back and forth with a community that seems totally bizarre to them.
So can I ask you a question about that?
That's your job, dude.
I know, right? I just didn't want to interrupt the flow.
No, you've got to interrupt. Otherwise, my flow just flows on. Yeah.
No, that's all good. So what are some of these things that you discovered, this sort of magic wealth that was there already? I'm really interested in this idea of this cultural exchange or cultural moment where, cultures who have more potential to travel, for example, more economic value are able to come to other cultures and deliver something that's supposedly valuable to them without noticing what it is that they've got already.
Yeah, that was beautifully put. That was beautifully put. That in terms of a political statement, that was beautifully put, but it also really resonates with the actual feeling I had, because we'd fly up to Athmothluk, a village of maybe 200 people, with and a bush pilot would fly my partner and me in, and we would have the entire plane. We had 20 pieces of luggage, including stilts, juggling balls, costumes, just lots and lots of a unicycle. And our job was, we'd get there on a Sunday usually, and our job, we'd sleep in the gym because there's no hotels and there's no public space except for the school and the store. There's a little store and the one phone in the store. This is in the 1980s. And Monday morning, we'd have to get up early and get out of the way because we would teach all day. And then we'd do a show for the village at night. And then we'd teach all week or half a week, depending on if it's a long or a short stay. And then we'd put a show together with the kids. So a couple of answers to your questions in there. One, in the early village, we did our show. We got a nice applause. We exited, and they just kept clapping. We came back for our encore, and we exited, and they kept clapping, but it got rhythmic. Okay, so we came out. We did one more little act and exit. They wouldn't stop clapping. They just kept going. We came on. We brought some of the kids up to show their scarf jug.
Wow.
And finally, we just hid backstage, and they left. Well, what happened was, we know we're professionals. We know how a show ends. You bow, they applaud. If they bow longer, you applaud, and then they know we're done and they go home. No, in that village, in many of the villages, Eskimo dancing was a big deal. Indian Eskimo Olympics is a big deal up there, and it is amazing. I mean, I was a pretty good acrobat in those days. I could not do any of the things in the Eskimo Olympics that the 4-year-olds could do. But Eskimo dancing in particular, and the way they honor a good dancer is by clapping rhythmically, and the dancer knows to do their dance again a little faster. You can see two groups of people who know exactly what's supposed to happen here. And we're both right. But they left feeling like, and we left feeling like, Now, to add to this as a cultural misunderstanding, that's in my book, The Snow Clown. That was obviously something I was going to put in. But I put it in early and thought it was not what I'm describing it now as, an answer to your question. I thought it was just a little get to know them. In a book reading, someone pointed that out and said, boy, that's a cultural misunderstanding. And I went, oh, I even misunderstood it when I was writing it.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's a good thing about doing a book and then doing book readings is people point out what you wrote.
You learn something about the book. So and maybe it's a good thing you didn't know what you were supposed to do, because then you would have had to come back out and do your act faster and faster.
Yeah, believe me, we made adjustments after that on our endings with villages. But okay, let me give you another one that was I included in the same scene, but it was a different show. I did a chase with my part. I was the one and she was the two, and I did chase through the audience. And I would sit on someone's lap, and the basic dress, especially for women, is called a kaspak, which is you can look them up. It's an amazing outfit that can be fur for outside or cloth, and it's beautifully rick-racked. And so there's a line of women who seemed old to me then. They probably are younger than I am now, but I was young and not so smart. Anyway, there's a row of women in kaspak sitting there. So I sit on one of their lap thinking, ha, ha, ha. She grabbed my ass like, aha! And then she said something in Yupik that really did get the biggest laugh of the show. And now I got to get out of there. As I go down the line, each of them really grabs my ass. Okay. Jeff, the clown from San Francisco, has a little misunderstanding of these women in this Eskimo village.
Of what it means to sit on somebody with their what signals you're giving when you do that.
And the fact that they were much funnier than me, really, I had a sore ass, but man, she got a bigger laugh than I did. Yeah.
So you were happy about that, Freddie, in the long run?
No, but those were just moments when I started to realize, let me just say that the big thing in Alaska was there's a deep tradition of storytelling. And some of the stories in the Yupik tradition are private. They're not, every kid has many names, and some of those names we were allowed to hear, but some are private. And so we started asking the kids about stories so that we could use them as the basis for some circus acts. But we noticed that the janitor, who is probably the top person in any village, because it's one of the very few jobs that you can have at home, is being the custodian for the. So we knew this guy was his son happens to be a pretty famous artist, so we knew who he was. So he just kept. In the morning, he was in every class just sitting there. And every time we asked the kids for a story, they would look over at Mr. McIntyre. Well, what he was signaling when they could tell a story, when they couldn't. So we're just going, come on, tell us stories. We'll use it. And no, we're diving into a whole world. And there's that in the book and in our trips, that was the whole, how do we negotiate these circus skills with people who live in the same country as we do and who have a very different language and culture that we want to support, but we're not sure if we're really supporting it or if we're hurting it. What exactly is going on?
These are really, really great questions. Yeah, I have the same questions when I've done Clowns Without Borders tours in the past.
I would imagine so. I haven't done one, but I would imagine so. Yes.
I mean, we're not being paid in that scenario, but we are. But there is still that dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm curious, actually, who was paying for this tour?
There, another irony: the Alaska Arts Council. So in the '80s in California, we had huge cuts in the arts. We had Ronald Reagan as a governor before the country was subjected to him, and so the California Arts Council was, but Alaska had oil. The pipeline was going in, so. There was huge amounts of money, and they only wanted us up in the winter, usually around February, March, because that's when everyone was just stir crazy. Bring in the clowns. So we did that.
You're fulfilling. I like that as well, because it's, I like to think of clowns fulfilling social functions, that they actually have this value that's really concrete and real.
Yes.
And the fact that there was that time of year when they needed that.
Yes.
You came in.
Yes. I completely agree about clowns filling social functions. It's in our history for a long time in a lot of cultures. In the Nebraska part of the Snow Clown, it was years later, I had written a solo play that had themes of the Holocaust. I'm Jewish, and had themes of the Holocaust. And my father had been a soldier in Germany. He joined when he was 16. He was 6'4", and he lied. And he later committed suicide, which now know, it was a supposition of that play, but I now know as a fact was essentially PTSD from his time in the war. So I wrote a play that was a comedy about the Holocaust and suicide, which is and I was an artist in residence in Nebraska doing this play and teaching and adjusting and learning so much about what I think people should be watching when they're watching my play, what they're really seeing. And there's one of my favorite scenes in the Nebraska part is going to a high school where the president, my host didn't mention it till we got there, but the president of the student body had killed himself. And the backstory was heartbreaking. He was a gay young man who had been bullied in a school, transferred to this school and found a place in the school and was voted student class president, but his past also caught up with him. So obviously that has some themes that matched what I was bringing in. And I'm in my head as the teaching artist. And what am I going to do? I'm sitting there getting ready in the classroom, and these cheerleaders, I can still see them, 5 cheerleaders march down the center aisle of the audience up on stage and looked at me, whipped out a ribbon of a spool of rainbow ribbon. One of them ripped out a scissors, cut it, folded it over, put a little safety pin, and said, "Are you going to wear this, or are you a fraud?" And that's the symbol of LGBTQ now.
Yeah.
But this is in the 90s. And I took it. I said, I will be wearing that. And I put it on. They go, "Good." And they like sat down in the front row and said, "What have you got?" Well, whatever lesson plans I thought I was doing is not appropriate. It happened to be that kid's funeral, and this evangelical church that has made a name for themselves by picketing funerals of people who had died of AIDS and bringing their kids to picket funerals. They said they were coming. So it was like, this has nothing to do with you, Jeff. All you can do here is support something that is actually beyond your social engagement. Well, I did. I had them talk about this kid, and I went out and supported, and the evangelicals didn't show up. But you know, what was it? That it wasn't my show.
Oh, what a beautiful thing! Wonderful story.
I have that.
Thank you.
I still have that ribbon.
Wow, powerful. Well, that was a long after discussion from the first book. So should we go back?
We're gonna go quickly. We're gonna go quickly through this. I do get excited. So this is the second in the trilogy, but the first one I wrote. And so this is at a time much later in my career when I was running a school, the Clown Conservatory, and I was performing with Cirque du Soleil. It was a year. So it's a fictional book of a year in the life of a school, September to June. And it's from the eyes of a student who has a physics degree and wants to be a clown. And then every other chapter is a first person of the director of the school on tour with Cirque du Soleil, as I said earlier, trying to do what he teaches on stage.
So the secret life of clown. This was going to be a question I was going to ask you anyway, because your website is called The Secret Life of Clowns. So what do you mean? What is the secret life of clowns?
Besides being a clever title my editor put together, no, what I really mean is that many, many people, certainly in the United States, have a view of clowns that is wildly inaccurate, even from the performative stance. But even people who are in the business and maybe aren't professional clowns, maybe actors, or don't have a view of what it means to learn to be a clown, the discipline, what it means to do that adjustment moment to moment. So you're in the moment with the audience, that adjustment show to show, today, Tuesday show, Wednesday show, and what it means to do that adjustment as you age, as your career goes on. Those are all core things in the life of a clown, but they're, I don't think we keep them secret because we want to, but they are secret.
That just has triggered a thought for me, Jeff, which is coming back to our conversation about life lessons from clowns. The idea of adjustment. This easily applicable to life, right? This idea that we've encountered the same situation over and over again, but we have this tendency to get stuck in those patterns. But this ability that clowns have to seek something new in that familiar thing, to find the difference, to find the change, the evolution, the being in the present, in the moment. That adjustment, I think, is a great word for that.
I agree. I agree with everything you said. One of the things, I do a lot of volunteer acts, and I'm pretty insistent that if you ask someone to come up out of the audience, they're the star, you're not. Many volunteer acts are simply a way to save money on not hiring an assistant or to make that person look ridiculous. And there are people who've made a great career out of that. I just don't go for that. And in the last few years, right before the pandemic started, I was doing a show that I'd done many times. And I asked myself, what if I get radical on this and make it and follow them? So I got maybe a 7-year-old out of the audience, and I do a volunteer acrobatics act. It used to be a little more complex than it is now. But usually I lead and they follow me on stage. So I said, I'll follow him. So I followed him up onto the stage and I just followed him. And he just ran across the stage into the other wings. And I ran after him. Right. That's funnier than what I had planned.
It's brilliant.
So I'm in the wings and I'm saying, okay, maybe time to start the act. But I said, no, I've committed. So I said, what do we do? And he looks at me and goes, follow me. And we run to the other wings. So now it's funny. This big ass clown's going around. So now we're in the, and now I said, what do we do? And he goes, I think we should go out there. I said, okay. And I follow him out. And now they're like cheering, but not for me. I'm the number 2. He's the number 1. And so I say, how would you warm up? And he says, oh, and he does a few things. I try to follow him. And it's kind of funny because this little 7-year-old. And then I said, let's do an acrobatics act. He goes, no. I said, no. He goes, no. So I'm thinking, follow. I said, what do you want to do? He goes, sit down. I say, good, hide behind me. And we sneak back into the audience with him. And he gets this huge applause sitting down. So that was my proof of concept moment of, oh, if you really do want them to be the star, people can do stuff. 7-year-olds can be so good and better than you.
There's a high level of risk, it seems to me, with that, because you don't always think, no, it's going to go as well as it did that time.
That's the skill in my mind. The skill is mitigating the risk, remembering that we're playing at this. We're in a play zone. So you are really not in charge. We're playing you in charge. I'm being paid to make sure this doesn't go wrong. I'm being paid to make sure you don't get hurt. I'm being paid to make sure you look like a star. So you've got, as with clowning, I used to tell students, you're 100% in character. You're 100% connected to your clown partners. You're 100% connected to the audience. You're 100% connected to the lighting, to the set, to your props. That's a lot of 100%. That's why it takes a long time to get there. But that's what's happening. Both of those are true. I can feel the risk. And the audience can feel the risk, I think. So whenever I take steps to mitigate the risk ahead of time, I think it loses a little something. Doesn't mean it doesn't need to happen, but I think you lose a little something. That risk, I did acrobatics is a risk every time.
Yeah.
Teeterboard. Part of the interesting thing is they are in the air. We are wondering if they're going to land where they're supposed to.
What about the idea of discipline, Jeff? You mentioned the word discipline earlier or several times. And how do you think discipline as a clown could be applied to life?
Yeah. First, I'm going to give a little preamble on this. Is my brother was a biostatistician and he loved teaching statistics. And we bonded around this idea. He said, when my students come in the first time, the thing I have to do is imbue them with the joy I have for statistics because they hate it. They don't want to be here. And I said, oh, so interesting. I have to do the opposite. My class is going, all right, let's go. I have to imbue them with the love I have for the discipline because they're going to be leaving the school soon if they don't get that.
I love that. That's
it was, and my brother, who's a pretty serious person, lit up when he's talking about the beauty of statistics. Okay, so clowning is, you don't do 500 shows. Clowns do things over and over again. I've probably done some acts, especially with my partner, Diane Wozniak, Pino, maybe 1,000 times. So it takes discipline to be able to do it. It takes structure and knowledge. 100 hours per minute of stage time, I say, about 50% before you start seasoning it in front of an audience, and another 50% as you're doing 50 hours as you're doing the adjustments. That's discipline. Also, I started as a juggler, solo juggler, 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm not that good company. I mean, I love talking with you, but frankly, when I'm by myself, I'd rather be with someone else. And 6 hours a day is discipline.
Yes.
John Gilkey, who's a wonderful clown, he started as a juggler. He did probably more like 8 hours a day. And then he became, trained in Chinese acrobatics as I did, which is deeply disciplined. but I think it applies. You asked the applicability, if I got the word right, which is people say, I don't rehearse too much because I don't want to over rehearse. I find I'm best when I just bring the spark. And I said, yes, but you're rehearsing wrong. You're rehearsing as if that's what you're going to perform. You rehearse, you have it so down so that you can be in the moment comfortably and find that spark in relation. Otherwise, that spark is coming from some other ether, which might work. I've watched Robin Williams perform, but I think there was also a discipline there too. But a lot of it was in Yiddish, spritzing. But there's also a discipline to get the structure. So yeah, I'll just make it happen. I don't want to be over rehearsed. You don't have the discipline to do it right, maybe.
So we can apply to that to life in an obvious way, because we have to, I don't know, we go into a meeting and we have to prepare something for a meeting, or work situations in particular where you need to prepare, and in a way it's good to over prepare, maybe, and then to be able to let go of what you prepared in the moment.
The juggling analogy, the rule of thumb with the jugglers, you have to be able to do regularly 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 without a drop before you put a trick into your act. And when you drop, it's a golden mistake and you make the gold.
Very cool. Let's move to the last book, Jeff.
So this one is Love Death Circus, which, by the way, that's the cover comes from artwork that my mother did. And it's framed by four memorial services in the San Francisco circus community. It was kind of a bad year. And we do pretty elaborate memorials and benefits as a regular basis here. And I produce, direct, and MC a lot of them. And they're glorious events. They're when the community comes together, and they're artistically pretty wonderful. And they're sad. The 4 people who die in this book, which include my mother, my best friend, one of the pillars of the community in both the circus and the theater community, Joan Mencken, and my partner at the Clown Conservatory, which is Peggy Ford. They all died what you would say a good death, where they wanted to be, at home, with loved ones, well taken care of. And it was really hard. So the question for this book is, how does a community that's based on physical skill and humor, being on stage, deal with people who are dying, the opposite of all of that? And the answer, in my opinion, is pretty damn well, and lots of lessons. And this is the first book I wrote in the third person, so the protagonist is a little farther away from me, and he struggles. It ain't easy.
It's wonderful to hear you talking about these memorials that you organize, and again, just coming back to this idea that our skills as clowns and artists can be so what's the word, practical, I suppose, and really involved and integrated into all life and death.
I love practical and integrated. Really, yes. And interestingly, on the way I direct these variety shows, I've studied vaudeville, and there's really specific ways you can program a variety show, but you still got the transitions. And we almost always get a group of my ex-students, usually professional clowns, 2 to 5, and say, you're doing the transitions. So as we do the tech, notice the transitions. You're responsible for all the props, and just don't try to be funny. You'll build that connection, but they know what I mean by that. So they serve this other. They're the glue that holds us together, which allows us to put it together quickly, which allows not to put too much of a burden on each act. They can come into a quick tech, and then and the audience to feel a connection between the show, which is really important, because some way reflects on the life of the person you're honoring.
It's high stakes, right? I mean, those shows, you want them to be good because it's honoring that person's life. Feels real, feels important.
My best friend was a director. She had been an aerialist and a clown, but she took a fall, and she was a theater director. And she was known for doing new works. So we decided everything is going to be new, either new just for this benefit or this memorial, or something that you made for a show that she directed, which is really risky. So I wrote a 3-part clown, 4-part clown, a certain number of part clown thing about her life. It was a clown tribute to her life. And it was not great. And the part that I performed in was, but the others, luckily, we'd hired some really good folks. But the last image of that was an aerialist. She had bipolar, but she died of cancer. It was kind of this big victory in her life. And she's part of this book is her story, which is that she said, cancer saved my life, because there's not much services for someone with suicidal depression, but there's a lot of services for someone with breast cancer. And she had to make a choice. Am I going to live or am I going to die? Am I going to fight the cancer or I'm going to be suicidal? And it's amazing. She said, okay, I'm going to fight the cancer, so that you can't do both. Anyway, this last one, we had an aerialist. Essentially, she wrote this piece on aerial rope that was her fighting cancer, this thing. And it ended with her up at the top, slowly doing one of those wonderful aerial drops into my arms with the whole cast there. And then she held and then went, and the whole audience went, the whole stage also went, but luckily we had a blackout. That was a moment where we got to see our friend.
Yeah. Beautiful story. Just our little conversation just now about discipline. And when you mentioned having to counter people's excitement by, bringing in this element of hard work.
Yeah.
Reminded me of a conversation a few months ago with Skye DeSella.
Oh, I know.
Do you know Skye?
Yes. Well, she was in the Pickle Family Circus back in the day, way before I was in it. But she and her sisters and her mother was a pretty prominent person in the community too. Yeah.
Right. I thought you might have connected at the Pickles maybe, but you didn't maybe overlap with her. I think she was there with John Gilkey at the same time.
Yes. She and Miriam. I may have done a one-off with one of the sisters, but I don't remember. But that was before. I didn't join too much later.
But she was saying exactly the same thing. So it just reminded me of, particularly with children, because she's been exploring clowning with children, which I think is an interesting thing. And children have this ability to be silly, right? They love to be silly. It's easy for them. Whereas for adults, actually being silly can be the challenge. Yeah. With the children, she said, what she's always working on is like instilling discipline and not making it fun.
I'm writing a new book with a few other people, a nonfiction book about our mutual, the DeSellas, and my mutual trainer, acrobatic trainer, Louis. And it's really clear from the interviews that the magic that he brought was discipline. Discipline with respect and love.
Yeah.
But people were hungry, and especially think about 1990 San Francisco had been a lot, and in the Haight-Ashbury, this is where the gym was, certainly a lot of movement against discipline, and as inherently bad, and that this just these interviews, just this hunger for that discipline. Partly because you can see you get better. You see the older folks, you go, I want a piece of that. Right. But I think there's something in it, when you've been really disciplined, it feels good. There's something really good about that, especially if it's internal, if it becomes internal.
I think it gives you a kind of confidence.
Yes.
You can walk onto stage. This is something that Avner says, I think at some point you actually quote Avner's thing about the comfort zone and, don't go out of your comfort zone, just make your comfort zone bigger.
I quote Avner a lot.
Yeah,
he's
it's
been
quotable.
a wonderful friend, and yeah, I use his "be interested, not interesting" all the time. Like, what a core clown idea.
Yeah.
And not that he or I or any of the rest of us do it 100% of the time, but you're being paid to be interesting.
Yeah.
So it takes a real leap to go, no.
I love
be
that.
interested.
I love that you said very early on in our interview that you were failing to do these clown things in your life. I think this is really good for everyone to hear.
I mean, I'm finding out more and more as I have a little more time. I'm not working full time all the time anymore. But how much, at least I've segmented my life, and not always to the better. But yeah, just a concept that works here. It works here. You use it without thinking.
Right.
You don't use it at all over here.
Yes. That's a very human trait, I think. We don't transfer things. We can be very segmented and siloed in our brains.
What a shame. My dog does it really well, I notice. My dog has trained all four of us in the family differently. She has different training techniques. She has different approaches during the time of day, and she can take things she learned here and use it here.
Wow.
And she sleeps, 17 hours a day. So
yeah.
Maybe that's smart.
Maybe that's the trick. Hey, Jeff, I'd like to, before we finish, I'd really like to ask you about your the corporate work that you've been doing, the corporate consulting. I know you said you got in sort of through the back door again, but can you just give us a little snapshot of that? Because I think people would be really fascinated to know sort of what that looks like. What kind of work you do with people, and how to get it, because I think some people would be interested in doing that kind of work.
Boy, you just asked me a big question with only a few minutes left. I'm going to try to get that in.
Okay.
But stop me if I'm adding more detail than needed. The basic idea is I do communications and leadership. So the communication is pretty straightforward. How do you be in front of the room? How do you use your body in front of the room? How do you use your voice? Okay, it's a performative. That's straight performing. It gets a little differently when you get into the mindset ideas, the prep, the discipline ideas, and it also starts. I have to find ways to repurpose, for example, theater games, clown exercises, to repurpose them to make sense for an audience who might be allergic to them otherwise. I'll give you an example. I worked with a friend of mine who's also from a theater background with 70 people in a big corporation. And I was charged with helping them deal with conflicting conversations. And I use a technique I got from a very famous theater for social change practitioner, Augusto Boal.
Yeah.
And I've repurposed that to work in a setting that could feel comfortable for people in a corporation. And they get to, it's a way that you essentially crowdsourcing in real time how to make possible ways to make a conversation work. But that's all about conflict. We did that for about 2 hours. And then we took a break, and took them a while to sell them on these ideas. We need to get the conflict out of our bodies, because everything I do is about embodiment. Because that's clowning. It's embodiment. It's using the body. And, in a lot of corporate worlds, this is what's welcome. You just got to feed it, So afterwards, I taught them a clown slap to get the energy out. And I framed it a little bit. But when this young woman came up, I taught them, I do this way, I teach a whole group to take a nap. And then I teach someone individually, and she came up and put her hand on my shoulder, and she does the slap. She did pretty good. And the whole audience like, wow. Now, that's the click. Like, that's fun. And then they got so into it that they bought these dolls that are called Damn It dolls that I'd never heard of, but they're for adults. and they're for smashing on your desk when you're pissed off. So that was the swag. So there's 70 of those, and I'd never seen them. I held one up, and this woman in the front row goes, "Oh yeah," and they're all standing, by the way. She goes, "Oh, I have one of those." I said, "Really? Now a clown concept. Show me." It's not about me. She took, and she was, I'm not a small person, and she was my size, and her hair went up to here. She is wailing on a chair. The whole place just, okay, just that. Even if I hadn't done any of the other, brought a joy, a humanity, and it wasn't about me. It was about them. I smacked the clown guy. I smacked the consultant. So that's what I like to do. Hopefully that gave you something.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is under the frame of communications
And leadership. And I do get in, and having done it for a dozen years now, I get some sense. I mean, I designed and did a whole series for a huge corporation about talking to CEOs. I now have talked to lots of CEOs, but I'd never talked to a CEO before. But talking to human beings, that's something we know about. And there's a certain way you can, listen to people, learn. But also from being a teaching artist in schools, you're always framing things up so you're not necessarily bringing the content. You go to a kindergarten class, you're not bringing the content. It's whatever's happening in the room. You're structuring it and letting them play within that. And you're bringing the discipline. You're bringing the structure. They're usually bringing the content. So that really helps when I'm working with, for example, computer engineers, who I work with a lot. I'm not bringing the content.
Right.
They are.
So is it at a point now where people kind of call you up and ask you to do this because you're well known, or are you sort of out there marketing yourself?
I'm not out there. I'm blessedly not. When I worked with this company, Stand and Deliver, that you mentioned in the bio, for 10 years. And with them, I did get known, and I had clients, and I was a client manager, and I worked a lot, and I was known, and it was nice. My colleagues many of them were also from the performing world, though I think I'm the only one from the circus world, many of them from the theater world, and they were fabulous. So we were really a great team, and it was great working with them. I left that, and I'm working on my own, and then with a couple of groups, I'm working with a new group called Ideal Leader. I like them a lot. They are really about content, and I'm really about process. And first I said, but then I went, wait a second. They're handing me 50 slides. I'm allergic to 50 slides, but they've got all this content, which means I can do my stuff. It like gives a structure that allows me to do my, it's like Cirque du Soleil. Here's all these acts that are so, well, I get to work in between. So, but I'm not working as much as I was with that, blessedly. So I can write this book about Louis. I'm directing a one-woman show, this wonderful physical performer, and getting to work on some other projects and getting to be with my family, which is really nice. In the US, when you turn 65, which I did last year, the world goes, phew, because all of a sudden you don't have to pay medical insurance.
Right.
At this level. You pay it down here.
Right.
And also, my kid graduated from college, and the other one's working right now. So, yeah.
So you can sit back a little bit.
I can talk to you this morning.
Yes, for which I'm so grateful, Jeff. And we have been talking for about an hour, and it feels like we could keep on going forever. But I suppose we should draw it to a close. It has been a really delightful conversation. Just so many amazing stories. And I just really appreciate and grateful for your responsiveness to the journey, right? That we've just gone on together for the last hour, and your willingness just to go with it. And I just to explore all these different ideas. I find it very, very nourishing personally, and I'm sure everyone else listening has as well. So
thank you.
So thank you.
It was really fun, and we brought up a lot of interesting ideas, or you did, that like the way clowns are. useful in society in so many levels. We didn't even get into Clowns Without Borders, who you've worked with, and there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, yes, we'll say goodbye to you, Jeff, and thank you so much. And I hope that you'll stick around with in our Way of the Clown group and our community, and maybe we'll have you on again at some point in the future.
Would love to. You know that. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, well, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us again for another hour. Wasn't that inspirational and wonderful? Just such a dear, delightful human being and clown, Jeff. I'm very, very pleased to know him. So that's it for this season, folks. However, there is going to be a special bonus edition of Clownversations. A few weeks ago, I talked with Jos Halben, and we did a recorded Clownversation, and I'm going to be releasing that next week on the usual day of the Clownversation. So it's like a little extra bonus. It won't be live. It'll be a pre-recorded Clownversation next Friday. Jos Halben, one of the main teachers at the Lecoq School in Paris, and an amazing performer and teacher. And it was a really, really cool Clownversation. So I hope you'll check that one out. So for now, please don't forget to have a look at the patreon.com/clownspirit site and see all the amazing ways that you can support Clownversations and Clown Spirit. We can't do it without you, folks. This is a completely free offer service that we provide, the Clownversations. And the Patreon site is a way that you can become part of that, putting clown out into the world and unleashing more clowns and more great clown energy out into the world. So please check that out and become a Clownversation supporter. Thank you so much, everybody. Keep clowning as always. Bye for now.